And the plan is to put it on the UMBC YouTube channel. And by the end of the semester, we will have had about 17 interviews. And
My goodness.
yeah, and I'm then going to look to making them all public, if everybody's okay.
Okay.
So let me officially welcome you to our class, How Women Have Shaped Electronic Music, and we're really, really honored that you're doing an interview with us. All of these students were in a class of mine last semester where that's a survey of 20th and 21st century, and we listened to Bye Bye Butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we also just listened to your poem of change.
Okay. Fine.
So, why don't we get started with questions? And what I'd like you to do is come up here, and we'll have this discussion. So, who would like? Michael, why don't you start? Okay. Let me introduce Michael Wu.
Okay.
Yeah, and she'll actually see your face.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Olivia.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
All right. Ready to go.
Okay. So my question for you is, as a composer with such a prolific career, do you ever find yourself lacking in inspiration for new projects? And how do you nurture your creative drive?
Well, all right. So I don't lack projects.
Okay.
There's always something happening these days. In fact, I'd probably be mad if it wasn't so. But for example, I'm working on an opera right now, which is taking some years to do, and we're beginning to have some interest in it, and we'll be doing a couple of scenes at the end of this semester at RPI where I'm teaching. And my partner Ione is the director of this opera and has written the script. So I'm doing the composing and sound design. But it's taking a lot of teamwork to do this.
That sounds great. Could
you? I think you had a second question.
Yeah. So I guess I was wondering, how do you nurture your creative drive? But it was in reference to the first one. But
well, I nurture it by doing my work.
Makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a lot of a good feeling from doing a project or completing one or working on one.
Mm-hmm.
So
each project just kind of feeds into the next, I suppose?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Depends. Some projects are maybe more exciting than others, or some suggest other things to do. Yeah.
Okay. Hey. So
Thanks.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for your question. Bye-bye.
And Kara is coming up next.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Kira.
So my question for you is, when you're coming up with the concept for a piece, do you think of it ahead of time, or do you sort of manipulate with like electronic sounds and come up with something through spontaneity?
Well, why don't I say yes to both?
Makes sense.
Okay. My work these days is I just got back from Berlin, where I performed 3 events in the CTM festival, and the first event was a trio with the trumpeter from Lebanon, Mazen Kerbaj, and an Irish composer, Karen Power, who goes fishing for sounds in any body of water anywhere and comes up with amazing sounds using a hydrophone. So we had a trio together. I knew about their work because I have been. I've seen Mazen perform several times. Heard him perform. Karen, I went around the Barra Peninsula near Cork, Ireland, with her and her partner and Ione, and we traveled around, and everywhere we went, if there was a body of water, well, Karen was sticking her hydrophone in there and fishing. But she gets really amazing sounds. Okay, so we played together, and we had never played before. We had maybe a few minutes sound check. So you asked about spontaneity. Well, there you go.
Great.
It's
So
very
it's a
spontaneous,
nice mix.
but I had thought of it before. I had thought about it
Mm-hmm.
and figured that it would be an amazing sound collection because we three were so different.
That's great.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Kira.
And Amanda is coming up now.
Okay?
Careful of all the cables.
Hi.
Hi, Amanda.
My question for you was, what do you think are the unique advantages of electronic music that other genres of music don't necessarily have to offer?
Well, that's a good question. I started working with tape music. This is before electronic music. Tape music was using a tape recorder and collecting sounds, and some people did a lot of cutting and splicing of the tape to put them together. But I didn't work that way. I improvised my sounds, and I used a lot of found objects to do that. But I would improvise sequences of sound and then put them together. So I didn't do tiny cutting and splicing like, for example, Mario Davidovsky, who made enormous amounts of cuts in tape and splicing it back together to do his work. So electronic music came just a bit later, 1965. You heard an example called Bye Bye Butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
And that piece was improvised. I had created my own way of making electronic sound. In those days, there were not synthesizers. There were no synthesizers, and there were no mixers. So what I did was I used 2 oscillators, sometimes 3 oscillators that were never intended for making music at all, because they were test equipment. And but I set the oscillators above the range of hearing to create difference tones. And difference tones are the differences between the frequencies that you have set. But then these oscillators had big dials on their front. So if you turned the dial, you could change the frequency. So I learned then that I could change the frequency I could change the dial just a little bit and sweep the whole audio range, which was really exciting, and create all kinds of what you would call frequency modulation sounds. And in addition to that, I had tape delay, meaning that I used 2 machines, tape machines, with tape running from a reel, the supply reel on one machine, going past the record head and then the playback head of the first machine, and then over to the second machine going past the playback head. That machine was not in record, it was just in playback. And then in order to get the kind of, what should I call it? The sounds that I got traveling between the machines, I used a patch bay like a telephone operator. So that's the only kind of mixing that I had. So I would patch a say the signal from the second tape recorder, maybe track 1, I would patch it back to track 2 of the first machine, and maybe patch the signal from the second machine back to the first machine, the first track. So you got crisscrossing traveling sounds, and you could hear that in Bye Bye Butterfly. But the third thing that I did, which was not done much in those days, was I wanted to use the phonograph record. And I found one lying on a table nearby, and talk about spontaneity. I picked it up and put it on the turntable and fed it into my system. And I didn't know what was on the record at all. It just happened to be arias from Butterfly of Puccini.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened. A lot of people think that I had a big feminist plot there, but it was just that I was interested in working with a phonograph and this system that I had set up, and so there you go.
Cool. Very cool.
But you asked me a different question, and I gave you a different answer.
That's okay. I was just asking what are, the unique things about electronic music? Why is it exciting for you? What does it have to offer that other music doesn't?
Well, at the time, I was very interested in exploring sounds, and new sounds. And instrumental players were not very adventurous in those days. And so, they thought that doing extended techniques would harm their technique. That was one of the problems. Or they just didn't want to make the kind of sounds that I was interested in. So when I started to work with tape and then with this system that I created for myself, I found that I could make all kinds of sounds that I had never heard before. And so that excited me a great deal, and so that was one of the benefits of working with electronic sound.
Okay, well, thank you.
Players have changed their tune quite a bit. These days
Yes.
they do lots of wonderful things.
Yes. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Jared is coming up.
Jerry, okay.
Jared.
Sharon, hi.
Hey.
Hi,
Hey, how you
Sharon.
doing? Hey, what's up? How are you?
I'm up.
Hey, so I just had a quick question for you. I was wondering, I'm actually a violinist. I think of music a lot as a performer, and I know,
Right.
basing off of your past answer to Amanda, you mentioned that performers of the day weren't actually super interested in changing their technique and changing their performance experience. I was wondering, actually, I guess building off of that, a lot of performers that I know today, they tend to say that they have an experience in life that alters or affects how they approach music. And I know when we studied your work, we found that you worked a lot with sonic meditations, but before that you worked with performance art, and even before that you worked a lot with the reproduction of electronic sound. I was wondering if you had any particular experience in life that affected your, I guess, approach to music, or I guess the work that you did in music.
Sure. Well, I think it started early on because I was always fascinated with sounds that I heard, and I was born in Houston, Texas, in 1932, and in that time the soundscape of Houston was amazing because it's lowland and sort of a little bit swampy. So there were all kinds of amazing insect sounds, bird sounds, and I used to listen to that really all the time. and I liked those sounds. They were amazing sounds. I also heard piano lessons every day because my mother and grandmother taught piano at home, and so I heard a lot of music, and we went to a lot of concerts and recitals as well as my own fascination with soundscape. So I would say that both sides were developed through listening.
Okay.
But then I wanted to make different kinds of sounds, as I said before, that players were not really interested in doing. So then I discovered tape music, and then not too long after electronic sound, and found that I could make sounds that I really had been hearing in my own mental space. So that's how it happened.
Perfect.
But the experience came from the listening that I did as a child.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're very welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel's coming up.
All righty. I'm ready for a Daniel.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi.
My question was in response to we listened to your poem of change on last
Yes.
Monday, and right before that we watched a TED Talk by you, and you kept talking about that, saying that you're always listening to the sounds that you hear around you. And then we listened to the poem of change, and at first, because I just heard what you were talking about, I was listening to all the sounds that I was hearing, but then shortly into the piece you started asking some questions. I believe one was, do we respect nature? And those questions kind of inevitably pulled my attention away from just purely listening to the sound.
Exactly, yeah.
And so my question is, what reaction were you trying to achieve from asking these questions, if any? Were you trying to make a certain statement?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, the poem of change was written before any of these sounds were added. What happened was that the VDR radio in Cologne, Germany, there was a wonderful man, Klaus Schoening, his name, who had a program, and he liked to commission people to do pieces for that program that were text based, and so I had this text, and I was invited to the studio, the radio studio there. And it gave me access to a very large library of sounds that had been collected, by the radio through many, many years. And so there were World War II sounds. And of course, I lived through the World War II and many things about that war. And so I used the sounds from the library, and the situation was that there was an engineer to carry out whatever I wanted to do. It's called a Tonmeister, I think, in Germany, and so it was a somewhat old-fashioned way of making electronic music at the time. But I enjoyed it because of the access to this very, very large library of sounds, so I could go and listen and pick the sounds that I wanted to use for the piece. So it was made that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you asked me if I had something that I wanted to have happen. I think I just wanted to raise consciousness in certain ways
Okay.
about, and for instance, you probably have not a lot of understanding maybe or experience concerning World War II. So this piece, if you were inclined to do a little research, you would find out a lot about it. About World War II, for example. Yeah. The piece I'm working on now, it's got a lot about World War One.
Oh yeah.
which I didn't live through.
Yeah.
But I'm learning a lot. And one of the principal things that I learned was that World War One introduced machine guns to war technology, and which is a very significant step in a series of technological steps. Okay.
Well, thank you. That's very good.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay, we're up to Claire.
Claire, all right.
All right.
Hi, Claire.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, yeah.
Um.
Hi.
All right. So, like the other day, Daniel mentioned that we actually watched a TED Talk with you.
Yes.
It was speaking. One part of it was speaking about the cistern that you were performing inside of with your deep listening band. So you had mentioned that it was like a 45-second delay, and there was no way to like capture that or like bring it to audiences when you were down there because it's a cistern. You can't have a whole audience in there. Later on, I think you also mentioned that these students somebody were able to make that into a software, and then they were able to record it and make it into kind of like a performance for people to watch. So my question has to do with that, sort of. It has to do with like, how did the development of technology or being able to work with more advanced technology over time, how did that affect your motivations and purposes when you are composing?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, the cistern was a very amazing experience. The sound was, if you made a sound, it would stay there for 45 seconds. And for instance, Stuart Dempster, who played trombone and didgeridoo, could pick up his trombone and play, and then put it down and pick up the didgeridoo and play a duet with himself. Right?
Yeah.
So that was an experience, as you heard in the TED Talk, I think, that changed our way of listening.
Yeah.
Because you can't just go down in a space like that and play any old thing that you want, right?
No.
You have to listen to because the space is joining you; it's playing too.
Right.
And a lot of people don't understand that the deep listening CD has no electronics. There's no electronics in use at all. It's just the three of us.
Yeah.
Okay, just the three of us playing acoustically with the cistern. We're not playing in it, but with it. Okay. So that was an important discovery. Then, after we had come out of the cistern with 5 hours of recording, we decided we had an album. We didn't have the deep listening band at that time. It wasn't named, right? You heard about that in the talk. We decided to call it deep listening because it was 14 feet underground.
Right. Yeah, you did mention that. So,
yes.
Being able to like hear your performance or like hear your capture the 45-second delay in software, did that affect you? What did that make you feel like when that happened?
All right. Well, first of all, it was the desire we had. We had a desire to be able to play in the cistern in any venues. You see, so we wanted to bring the acoustics of the cistern to a venue. That was something that we talked about and wanted to do for 25 years. And since I'm teaching at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, there is a sonic architecture program there. And my colleague Jonas Brausch is an acoustician, and he's also a musician. We took him to the cistern, and he took an impulse response. Impulse response is a sharp sound which gives you the spectrum of the whole frequency content of space. And then from there, they were able to create the cistern software.
Right.
And so it turns out that it gives a very good, excellent replica of the cistern acoustics. So that on my 80th birthday, that was my 80th birthday present, was playing in the cistern in the concert hall at RPI where I teach. There were 600 people in the audience, and everybody was in the cistern with us.
Were you really
And
excited?
it was yes, we were all very excited, and so was the audience, and they really loved the experience, you know. So now we're able to do that, and we do have a recording out. It's the 25th anniversary recording of the Deep Listening Band, and we're playing in the simulated cistern.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's there. It's out there.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're
nice to
very
meet
welcome. Nice to meet you too.
And Ross is coming up.
Okay, Ross.
Hello.
Hi, Ross.
Hey. So when we were listening to Bye Bye Butterfly and Poem of Change, I was wondering if you used or what computer interface you would have been using, to put the things together and then finally export the product.
Well, I don't want to disappoint you, but there was no computer. That was that was in the 60s.
So they were okay.
Right.
It was
Can
just,
you imagine life without computers?
not really.
Well, let me tell you, I'm an analog native and a digital immigrant.
Wow.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Does each, change in the technology, change how your music sounds? Because
Yes, it does, and it can. Yes, it'd be very difficult for you to create the sound of Bye Bye Butterfly, for example, on a computer. Yeah, because it is analog, definitely analog, and so is Poem of Change.
is something like a Moog analog too, or is
No, well, it's electronic, but I guess you'd have to say it's an analog synthesizer. What do you think, Anna?
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Okay, so is the buccal synthesizer.
Right.
Yeah.
cool?
So they're kind of intermediate, going towards computation, going to computers. But the computers were still not available when those instruments were created.
No computers. Okay.
Can't believe it, huh?
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
I know we're getting on towards half an hour, so maybe you could tell me, can you spare us another 5 or 10 minutes?
Of course. Fine.
Okay, Ariel has a question.
All right.
Hi.
Hi, Ariel.
Hi. My question is about your creative process. And so, taking into consideration all the experience you've gathered over the years and the advances in technology, how might your creative process differ now than from at the beginning of your career?
Oh, well, quite a bit. At the beginning of my composition or composing, I used to sit at the piano searching for the pitches that I wanted to express. And so that was like a kind of form of improvisation, finding what I was hearing. And so I would write them down, and it took me, a long time to be able to write the notation for what I was hearing. But that's the beginning. And I've already said, listening was very important to me from the beginning of remembering what I did when I was a child. And it was those sounds around me that really got my attention. As I went on, I found different ways of making music. I was encouraged by my mentor, Robert Erickson, to improvise. If I was working on a piece, he would just say, well, if you got stuck, you just improvise. And then I had my friends, Terry Riley and Lauren Rush and I, one day went into the radio studio where there was a tape recorder, and Terry had to write a piece for a film, 5-minute track. And so we went in together and sat down and improvised a number of 5-minute tracks. And then Terry used one of those for the film. But we have, those improvisations are available on the Other Minds website. And I sort of recommend to have a listen to those.
Okay.
If you have time, if you're interested. But they were very important, and improvisation is what I do these days with my instrument, and it has always played a very strong role in my work. And sometimes it's just improvisation, sometimes it's improvisation with notated music, sometimes it's improvisation with a sound file. It changes quite a bit. Yeah. But it's certainly been very important. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So we'll do one more question. Briley gets the last question.
Okay.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you, Ryan?
Pretty good.
I like your cap.
Oh, thank you. Regarding performance spaces and environments, earlier you mentioned that you like to play with the cistern versus in it.
Right.
Even with newer electronic compositions, they're not always performed in specialized spaces. Sometimes they're performed in concert halls, even maybe installations, but not in things like cisterns or caves or even experimenting with outdoors. So I guess the question is two-part. One, what quality or atmosphere did you guys really take away from performing in those spaces? And two, with all of the new electronic music coming out now, would you encourage newer artists who are working with this experimentation to go out and experiment in different settings?
Yeah. Well, of course I would. I think one of the things that we do, we being Deep Listening Band, is always listen to the space first before we play with it or in it. And I think that a lot of people or a lot of musicians are not really paying attention or giving attention to where they are and how it sounds one way or another in a particular space. So, for example, electronic music doesn't always sound good in a concert hall that was created for acoustic instruments. And acoustic instruments maybe don't sound so good amplified. So I think that there has to be a lot of attention given to sound design, or by that I mean the design of a playback system and how it is set up in any space. What's the reverberation sign? How can you place the speakers to get the best sonic image from the electronics or from acoustic instruments or a mixture of both? But this is a very wide field of experimentation. There could be a lot of work done, research done on that. So I think it's a great question, Ryan.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank you so much for participating in this class. Maybe you could all...
Thank you. Thanks for asking.
Thanks so much.
I think the questions were really good. I enjoyed answering them. Yeah.
Great. Okay, we'll be in touch.
Okay, Anna.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Ah, great. Okay. See you later.